Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Very, very, very excited to get to work on Anthony Belton. Get to know our newest offensive lineman. Don't want to call him a tackle because I don't know. Could be a guard. Doesn't matter. However, some news today on the Jair front as we continue to vacillate on this issue. Just yesterday, we were told essentially it's basically done. There is no resolution, et cetera, which has been kind of a consistent theme. Then today, Rob Demovsky drops a bomb. According to a source, the Packers and Jair continue to talk about a possible resolution, which could include a reconciliation to where Alexander plays for the Packers in 2025 after all. Now, he says all options are still on the table, release, trade, or return. I find this important because yesterday, whatever, doesn't matter. Packernet After Dark, I had mentioned that we got to stop thinking in terms of black and white, and we got to start thinking more in terms of percentages, because there's very little black and white. Generally, Gutekunst and LaFleur, all these guys, they want to keep their options as open as is humanly possible. And so the idea that they were 100% out, I think generally you wanted to try to keep your options open, but it is possible that they've made a definitive decision that he is gone, there is no reconciliation, it doesn't matter, we just don't want him back. So at the very least, what this tells me is that it's not 100%. Now, it doesn't mean that that's their greatest option. I mean, if you think about how this conversation could have gone, what does it say? The Packers and Jair continue to talk about a possible resolution. Now, it seems to me the Packers have been trying to trade him as their number one option. The hindrance to that is that he's refusing to restructure his contract. It's possible they're trying to find a way to get him to compromise on some kind of a restructure so that he can go to a certain place or whatever. You could imagine Rob saying, is when you say, working on a resolution, could that possibly mean coming back to Green Bay? And the answer is, yeah, possibly. And again, just tell me it's not 100%. And so at least we've resolved that. I don't know the percentages. I still tend to think their top priority is to move him. But the good news is if he's refusing to restructure and it looks like a trade is unlikely, it's possible that the second best option for the Pack, not for my opinion, my number one option would be, my bad, dog. I ain't gonna trade you. What do you think? We love you. You stay forever. You want a pay raise? Yeah, you get a raise. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't give him a raise. But obviously, you understand the situation of saying, we don't want to pay you this much money when you never play. And so if you'd be willing to restructure and lower your whatever, then you can stay here, and that's not going to happen. But now that you don't have any prospects at corner, I'm just saying it's possible that the Packers could look at the situation and say, a lot, not even bringing him back. We're not talking about a new contract. We're just talking about keeping him on the books, essentially, which, again, it's pretty expensive. And I understand not necessarily wanting to do that, but when you have the money, and as I've said to Bears fans and everybody else, money can't win you championships. So cutting him and saying, now we have a pile of money. What are you going to do with it? Well, nothing. That's not ideal. And granted, next year they'll have more money and potentially it's a better free agent class and you can do something with it. But as for this year, it does you no good to move him. The only thing it can make you is worse. The only way it doesn't make you worse is if Jair is worse than Keyshawn Nixon, which would be some kind of a radical thing that took place. Where Jair is just bad or Keyshawn exploded, which even in that case, he would just take Valentine's spot. So both of them would have to be better than Jair, and neither of them are. So again, I don't want to read too much into it, but I was very excited to see that at the very least, it's not 0%, and there is some world in which Jair does stay. Maybe they're at 90%, Maybe they're at 2%. I have no idea where we're at with that. And I don't want to jump the gun and go from it feels like it's close to 0% to I think he's coming back, because that's way too volatile of a swing based on Rob Demovsky saying, yeah, maybe. Essentially saying it's not impossible. It's not 0% is essentially what this says, which is big news because I was kind of thinking it might be 0. Kind of like what we were hearing about Aaron Rodgers, where they were just done and there was no world in which they would ever allow him back on this team. Whether the reporting was true or not, I don't know, but that was what was being said. They were completely and totally 100% done with him. But if you remember prior to that, there was a scenario where Rodgers didn't want to come back, and obviously I'm sure Gutekunst was not a big fan of him, but they understood that the best case scenario in both camps, this is back when there was the possibility of him hosting Jeopardy and the news drop he wanted to be traded on draft night. I'm talking about that year, whatever year that was, the year prior to him going away, or 2 years prior, whatever it was, I don't know. When he got his big freaking contract, monstrosity of a contract that it was. But all right. Only other news here is that there's no news with Aaron Rodgers. Apparently he has no timetable. Interestingly enough, I've got an article here by over at RG. They did a sit-down interview with Jordy Nelson. Jordy essentially said about Rodgers, I have no idea what he's going to do, but I know he's going to take his time. I think that's exactly what he's going to do. He also did, Jordy, comment on Matthew Golden. Asked what he brings. Jordy said speed. That's what I've been hearing, is lots of speed. That's something that'll be good to be able to stretch the field on the outside, maybe open it up a little with a couple tight ends they have with Jaden Reed, all the work he's done, the speed sweeps and everything inside. I think it'll be a fun dynamic to have. I think he'll probably be overreacted. I don't know what that means. But he'll get comfortable with Jordan, create that chemistry, and hopefully be successful. So there's actually a video along with that. You can check out the article over at RG or on YouTube. Let me check this out real quick. Yeah, YouTube channel is just called RG, but it is exclusive. Jordy Nelson reacts to Packers draft choice Matthew Golden. We did Matthew Golden yesterday, so I'm not going to go too in-depth on it, but if you're interested in that, go check it out. All right, let's get into Anthony Belton. We're going to start with some of these press conferences here to hear, first of all, what the Green Bay Packers had to say, and then we'll go back and find some goodies.
Is he just left tackle, or do you think he can play a couple positions for you guys?
I think he's very versatile. I think he can play left tackle. I think he can play both guard spots. I think he could play right tackle. So that's one of the things that attracted us to him is, it's a big man, versatility across the line of scrimmage, where we play. I think it'll be a really good fit in the room with the guys that we have now.
Why is that size so important? Obviously, you guys signed Banks and Freitas as another big guy. Why is that kind of the way you're trending, do you think?
It's the old phrase, big doesn't get small, especially when you play up here in the NFC North. We play in the cold, and you could wear people down as the season goes along and the elements change. It's kind of the way we were raised in this thing up here. We want to be big across the front. We want to be physical. We want to be able to overwhelm with size and physicality. So, that's what attracted us to him. And he's a good football player, but he happens to be a huge man as well.
This is John Eric Sullivan, by the way. I didn't mention that.
Really big man.
He is a big man.
How is that footwork for pass protection?
Good. I think you could really see what you needed to see in terms of the twitch to play out there on the edge, whether it be left tackle, right tackle. When we were down there in Mobile, his ability to get out of his stance and match speed on the edge, it's in there, and obviously he can move people in the run game. Again, whether we have a really good, robust offensive line, a lot of really good, versatile pieces. We'll throw him in with the group. It'll be great competition, and kind of see how it all shakes out. But we do feel like he could play on the edge, whether it be left tackle, right tackle, and play it very well.
John, this is only the second time in the last 12 or 13 years that you've gone offense with the first 2 picks. What do you think you're building there on that side of the ball?
Obviously we have a young quarterback that we really like, and we need to make sure that we're protecting him first and foremost. So I think with you look at what we did in free agency with Banks, you look at the second round pick and Anthony Belton, we got to make sure that we're keeping him upright and healthy. that starts there. And then I think anytime you're thinking about the skill, you want to make sure that you're giving Matt the flexibility to attack all different levels of the field. And I think a guy like Golden does that. He's speed. He can get vertical. He can beat you underneath. And he's got tremendous ball skills in hand, so it's just another weapon. And I think he fits really nice in the room with guys that we already have. It'll be a nice addition, not only the player and the skill set, but then the person. He's wired right. Being a good football player is very important to him. And I think he's going to jump in that room with the guys we got, and it's going to be fun to watch those guys compete and see what shakes out.
Jair, he's been a starter at left tackle for 3 years. Just what have you seen in terms of the growth of his game, as he's been a starter in multiple?
Sure. I think, again, to come back to the size, the one thing you see that you could see early in his career and that you could see really throughout and again through the All-Star period is he can play and survive, really not survive, but dominate versus power. When guys try to play down his middle, his ability to anchor and just play big man football, you can't play through him. He's just a huge man. He's got really good length, and so he's hard to play through that way. I think as he's grown as a player, you've seen the footwork improve. I think he's been much more cognizant in terms of weight, making sure he's where he needs to be that way. He's just matured as a player, matured as a person, and we really like where he's gone throughout his career. And then I think as this process has evolved through the Combine, the Senior Bowl, to this point where we are today, he's checked all the boxes along the way, so we feel really good about what we got.
What you just said about Anthony being a big man, Aaron Banks was a big man too.
Sure.
When you look at the identity of what this offense can be, especially with who your running back is,
Sure.
How significant did you feel like that was in finding those type of guys that can come in and be those type of road type blockers?
I think first and foremost, we look for really good football players, whatever your skill set is. But I think anytime you get a guy that's a really good football player up front on either side of the ball and they possess size, where you're talking about offensive side of the ball or defensive side of the ball, again, in these elements, it's a huge deal. And to your point with Josh, to be able to run behind a big offensive line with Elton, with Banks, with Sean Ryan, with now Anthony Belton, Zach those guys, Rasheed Walker, all those guys possess size, they possess power, they can move people, and they're good athletes in their own right. So it provides a lot of flexibility how Matt calls the game, schemes that we want to run, because you can play both phases, right? You can move people, you can run some gap scheme power, you can run outside, inside zone. So, those things, it's good to get guys that are versatile, well-rounded players that allow you to do different things offensively.
Jair, you mentioned that he's a really mature player, got to know him. What is he like off the field?
Professional. He's a professional kid. He's quiet. He's about his business. I think when you talk to the people there at NC State, that we kind of talked about his growth over the years there. Football's important to him. He'll fit great in the locker room. He's one of the guys. He's humble. There's humility. But again, a lot like Matthew Golden, being a good football player is very important to him. I think he's. You talk to those people at NC State. He's selfless. He wants to be a good teammate. Whatever. In terms of where we play him, guard, tackle, I think he's willing to do whatever he needs to do to help us win. He's an unselfish kid, and those are the things that we took from him and our process at different touch points. Was this guy's an unselfish player who wants to win and will be a really good teammate and a really good player along the way.
Which of those do you want to play him at? I know you generally don't want to move the rookies around too much. Do you want to have him go at tackle in camp or at guard?
You know what, and I know you guys get this answer every year, but the truth of the matter is you kind of, I'm sure we'll work in both. And then we have, again, with the different pieces that we have, you just kind of throw them in the mix and see how it shakes out. I imagine he's played tackle, so obviously he's going to take reps there. But I imagine as big as he is, we'll work him at both. You never know what's coming down the road with injuries or what have you to make sure that he's ready to go at two different spots.
Jones told you that he could play guard.
Oh, he absolutely could play guard. Yeah. I'm sorry, is that what you...
Yeah, I was saying, what told you that? What signs did you see?
Sure. One, the size, the girth, and his ability to move people, when he gets on you, he can get thick on you in a hurry and kind of road grade you out of the way. I think the ability to play against big people inside and hold up in the pass game, again, just burst power. You're not going to see him in the quarterback's lap too often. He can do those things. So, again, I think he's got all the athleticism and length to play on the edge or outside of tackle, right or left, if need be. I think you can kick him into guard, and you can have a really good player there too.
John, Banks is big, Belton's big, a little bit bigger than the guys you guys have typically targeted over the years. Jordan plays more in the pocket than his predecessor does and moving around. You mentioned not being able to play through him. Is that a consideration with some of those guys when you're talking about these big guys like Carter and some of these great defensive tackles that really push the pocket?
Yeah. Yes, of course. I think you look at some of the teams that, whether you're talking about the NFC North or you're just talking about the NFC in general, as you get into the playoffs, some of the defensive fronts that you face, I think you got to have guys that can hold up, and we look for that. We look for guys that can play big man ball and sustain versus power and do those kind of things. I think if you don't have that, eventually you're going to succumb to it because you're going to play against powerful big fronts, especially the deeper you go into the playoffs. So you got to be able to handle that.
Two more, please. You brought him in on a visit. Where did you learn about him during that time?
A lot of the things we already knew from the school call and again, from being around him at the Senior Bowl, just a good kid, humble, excited about the process. Football is important to him. He handled himself well here. I think he really liked what he saw in the facility. He was excited to be here and just enjoyed being around him. I know the coaches really liked him. They thought he was going to be a great asset to the locker room, to his position room specifically. And, we're really, really fired up to get him here and kind of see where this all goes.
So we'll skip the final question because it's about him and his pursuit of becoming a GM, but he did have a one-on-one with The Rock, so we'll go through that real quick.
Sure. Obviously the size is what jumps out, Larry. He's a big man. He's very versatile in what he brings to the table. He's obviously played left tackle at NC State. We feel like he could play both guard spots, right tackle, really whatever you need him to do. But we're excited to get Anthony. He brings a lot to the table in terms of athleticism, power, and I think he'll be a great addition to the room as a human being, to the locker room as a human being, and he brings a lot to the field as well.
When you talk about offensive linemen, of course, you mentioned the size, 6'6", 336. I'd pay money just to see the guy walk out in a uniform. But how are his feet? The dancing bear thing.
I think one of the things you saw down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl is for a big man, he can get out of his stance and he can dance. He can dance with the speed off the edge. He's a good athlete. He's got twitch out of his stance. He can match, he can mirror, and in the run game, he can move people. So he's a very nice combination of size, athleticism, and his ability to handle power in his pass sets is really what jumps out. He's very hard to play through. He's a huge man. He's got length, and he can sit down on people and kind of and anchor down.
Is he the kind of guy, attitude-wise, where he works to finish, where football's important to him?
Absolutely. I think you see that in his play. He can move people off the ball. He tries to bury people if he can. I mean, he's a big man. He plays a big man's game. I think he takes pride in that. You get a sense of that when you're around the kid, that physicality and size is what he knows he possesses, and I think he tries to bring that to the field when he plays.
Of course, you also have last year's first-round draft choice, Jordan Morgan, coming back. So how does it all fit together?
They're good problems to have. Jordan's going to be a heck of a player, and we're really excited to get him back on the field as well. We really like what we have in Jordan Love. We think he's got a long, illustrious career in front of him. We got to make sure we protect him. I think all you do, you bring really good football players into the equation, and then you just kind of let it shake out. We have a lot of really good offensive linemen that are very versatile. They bring a lot to the front, and we'll kind of throw them in the fire and kind of see how it shakes out.
All right, we got plenty more to get through. But with the Green Bay Packers, a lot to talk about with his with the Senior Bowl performance and more from there. But we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, here is Brian Gutekunst talking about Anthony Belton.
Huge left tackle from North Carolina State, just a guy who's got great athleticism. He's a mauler in the run game, very versatile like we like. He can play probably 4 spots for us. So I'm just really excited. Had a great Senior Bowl. I think everybody down there just really saw his potential and what he could do for us, and I'm really excited to have him.
There is some real nasty to his game. I mean, he's a finisher, and he wants to finish him on the ground.
Yeah, I love his play style. I mean, he loves to play the game, and again, he'll move people, and that's important for us.
Here he is at the press conference talking about the day 2 picks. We'll focus obviously today on Belton. Tomorrow we'll get to Williams.
Tonight, obviously, Anthony's a huge man. He's really versatile, like as you guys know, we really like. I think he's got probably the ability to play all 4 positions. He's never really done any center, but he could probably play both tackles and both guard spots. He's a mauler in the run game. He's very athletic. He really checked a lot of boxes for us all the way through. Had a great Senior Bowl, and just he was one of those guys that you just never know if you're going to be able to acquire. But he's just got so much power in his body. He just really fit what we're going to do. And then,
Ryan, what do you think is Belton's best position?
This question, by the way, I appreciate, because I had mentioned yesterday that you want to try to phrase questions like this to pigeonhole them into, like, I get it, he can play all 4, but, which one are you going to put him at? Like, just give me a freaking answer, will you? So this is a good way to ask that question. Yeah, but which one's his best?
That'll be interesting. I think, with his size and length, you certainly want to see if he can do tackle, and he has all the athletic ability to do that. I think he's one of those guys that can fit in where he's needed. So it'll be interesting how those, we got, with Jordan coming back, and, we're so excited about what he can do, and now adding Anthony, we're just really, I think, really excited about the growth of that entire group. And it really will probably be, as we get through this offseason and into training camp, really where Matt and his staff think it's going to be, best for him to train right away. So I think once they get to know him a little bit better through that process, it'll probably shake out that way. But I think he could play all 4 spots with the exception of center. Not that he couldn't play center, but I don't think we really, we envision him as that.
Brian, I know he has that moniker of Escalade. Just what do you think about how he kind of blends the athleticism with his size and just what he brings to the table?
Yeah, I think, again, obviously he's got great size, and he can move people in the run game. I think when down at the Senior Bowl was my first real exposure to him, and just seeing him and his ability to pass block, do all the things that I think that Matt asked our offensive line guys to do within our scheme. A lot of the movement stuff for a man his size is I think what drew us to him.
What makes you think he can play guard? What makes you think Belton can play guard?
Yeah, first of all, he's got exceptional quickness. He bends very well, and then obviously just his power. Like he can handle those guys inside. He can move them off the ball. He can get across the shade and snatch those guys. And so, yeah, like I said, I think, we had a lot of, conversations about where we think his best position, like Matt asked, and it's just like, whenever you have a guy with that athleticism and that length, you want to start him at tackle, right? And then move him inside. We've done that a lot here, where we've taken guys that played tackle in college and moved them inside. But I think he can play both. He just, because of his size and power and strength and anchor in the pass game, that's why we think he can play inside.
I'm sorry, someone go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, he has the length to go with that as well.
Yeah, I think he was like 34 and 5/8, something like that. I think we had him with about 6 measurements between 33 and 7/8 and 34 and 7/8, something like that. So he's a 34 guy. So
With Walker and Morgan already on the left side, are there even enough snaps to play him over there, or do you have to start him, like when camp starts, you have to put him somewhere else?
Yeah, again, I think that's going to be determined once we get him in the building. Obviously, I think our coaches need to get with him, but yeah, I think if you were trying to have all 3 of those guys play left tackle, that might be tough, So, but I think once we get him inside, whether they cross-train him at multiple positions or whether they just stick him in one spot, let him go, we'll see, But like I said, the versatility is something we're interested in.
Is Morgan still definitely going to compete at left tackle, or is that?
That's what I envision. I don't see that changing.
The size of Belton, the size of Aaron Banks that you've added to that offensive line, how much does that have to do with Josh Jacobs as your running back? You have this power running system that you really need to, that's the identity of your offense, and being able to equip yourself with that kind of size.
Right. No, that's a great question. We've always liked size like that, right? Going back to the days of, TJ and Josh and those guys, to be able to move people off the spot. But it's certainly, when you have a power back like Josh and the ability to kind of reset the line of scrimmage, so to speak, is certainly something that we've talked about and it's important to us.
When you look at the focus on the offensive line, both in free agency and early in the draft, How often, and is it at all related to the last time you guys played, it wasn't the showing that you wanted for this offensive line against a very good Eagles defensive front? Does that, something like that, linger with you in the offseason? Does that kind of set priorities when you...
I think you don't try to be too much of a prisoner of the moment in those things. I'm certainly, I think you're evaluating your team through the entire year, and you're evaluating against, the National Football League and yourselves. And again, I think sometimes when we draft players these days, people think that means something for something else. Sometimes it's just we build a board and those are the best players available, and that's what we take. And again, I'm glad we're getting bigger. I think back in 2018 when I took over this thing, I thought that was critically important that we continued to stay big, and I think we have over the years. And I think it's kind of one of those things where that can get away from you quickly if you don't pay attention to it. So. I think we're in pretty good shape right now.
Along those lines, are you bigger because you had success with Josh, or was signing Josh the impetus of all this other stuff that's happened?
No, I mean, again, I think we've always tried to stay big, and I don't think anything's really changed. I mean, I think certainly having Josh, again, whether we were, what we've had in the past, I mean, he was going to be that kind of player regardless. So really, having Josh really isn't factor a ton into this. You know what I mean? We would like to be big, so.
Like a guy like, Belton, would he have been a guy that you'd have picked 3-4 years ago? I mean, he's like this
he will not let it go. He refuses to let this go. I don't understand why you won't accept the answer. Why the change? Well, it's not a change. We've always liked to be big. Yeah, but is it because of Josh Jacobs? Well, it helps, but no, we've always liked to be big. Okay, but like 3 years ago, would you have done this? Yeah, bro. Frickin' yeah.
Well, opposite of like what Zach Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, Zach's unique, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think there's certain athletic traits you have to have, but we certainly would like bigger players to have those, But there are athletic traits, and Belton and Banks, the two guys we've kind of added over the offseason, have that.
Which does make sense. I mean, I've been also saying, this is a departure from what they've typically done, getting more smaller athletic guys. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the case. It's very simple. There is a required amount of athleticism that you have to play the kind of zone style of offensive line that they play. Typically, there aren't massive human beings that can do that, but if you can find one, that's even better. And in this case, they found one. I don't think there was ever a benefit to being smaller. So it does feel a little odd that we just added 3 massive people when typically we don't do that. So there may be some kind of a shift or possibly more of an emphasis than in the past. Whereas before it was, let's focus on athleticism, and if they happen to be big, that'd be great. And maybe now it's sort of a, through that process, we've gotten kind of small, and that's a problem. So let's see if we can focus on big and see if we can find guys that meet at least the minimum requirements as big guy. I'm just speculating, but again, I think we should accept the answer at some point. Here is Matt LaFleur doing his one-on-one talking about Belton.
How about your second-round pick, Anthony Belton, one of the world's largest human beings?
He is a big man, and I think he played a little bit heavier than he was at the Combine, but I think he really showcased his athleticism there and what he can do. And he's mauler in the run game, and I think he's good in pass protection as well.
How does his presence affect Jordan Morgan, last year's first rounder?
Well, there's more competition in the O-line room, and as a coach, that makes you happy because I do think that competition brings out the best in everybody, and it'll be a challenge for us to figure out who are the starting 5, but one that we're looking forward to.
All right, I think that's it from the coaches and the personnel folk. So why don't we take a break here? I want to pop back, and they've mentioned numerous times. You've heard John Eric Sullivan, you heard Brian Gutekunst talk constantly about the Senior Bowl. So I want to kind of rewind and see what people were saying about him at the Senior Bowl. We'll be right back. All right, so I pulled up several articles here. This is from SB Nation, 11 Senior Bowl winners who helped their 2025 NFL draft stock. On that list, offensive tackle Anthony Belton, NC State. Often overshadowed by Oregon's Josh Connerly Jr. and NDSU's Gray Zabel on the offensive line, I thought Belton had some really high moments this week in Mobile. He's a massive prospect at 6'6", 345 pounds, but showed some nice foot quickness and pass protection while really getting after it on down blocks. He came in with the grip, strength, and power to finish blocks in the run game, but I wanted to see if he could be consistent. This week, he was. I'm not sure what the original source is. I've been digging around, but regardless, this is from a couple different 49ers sites that I've found. Missouri offensive tackle Armand Membeau, one of the more intriguing offensive line prospects, missed practice due to illness. However, ESPN analyst Jordan Reed highlighted two offensive linemen who made a strong impression: Gray Zabel of North Dakota State and Anthony Belton of North Carolina State. He goes on to talk about Zabel for a little bit and then says Reed also noticed that pass rushers had difficulty getting past Belton. Quote, while he mostly played left tackle, the 6'5", 345-pound Belton also slid inside for multiple reps. His strength stood out the most as he used his complementary anchor to shut down rushers. Belton was outside of my top 8 offensive tackles entering the week, but he helped himself out by displaying his versatility and power. Field Gulls also did a winners and losers article and added Anthony Belton to their list of winners. They said Belton dominated in measurements at 6'5", 345 and with a wingspan over 83 inches. In addition to playing tackle, he's been asked to play guard and even center. Belton has shown naturalness, I don't know if that's a thing, in both new roles, and his versatility will certainly increase his stock. They added a couple different videos here. Anthony Belton one-on-ones. He looked solid transitioning between offensive tackle and guard. Never played guard in college. Another one here says Anthony Belton, offensive tackle / guard of NC State. It's actually in French. Hold up. I was like, oh, you misspelled of. That's weird. And I was like, oh, no, it's French. It says Anthony Belton was dominant in the individual duels and looked comfortable in both positions on the first day. Raw offensive lineman with lots of tools. Another somewhat interesting article, doesn't necessarily have to do with the pro day, but it's from the Power Sweep. This is the website associated with Blue 58 podcast. But in part, it says the Packers have fairly strict athletic thresholds for identifying prospective offensive linemen. Belton meets them all. He's quick off the line, had a 1.82 second 10-yard split. He's agile with a 7.77 and 4.69 in the three-cone and short shuttle, respectively. But what intrigues me most about Belton is his fit with the Packers. Belton played left tackle for NC State, but some think his best position in the NFL is at guard. Count me among them. I think Belton profiles as a road-grading monster of the interior linemen, similar to the recent signing of Aaron Banks. Talks about Banks a little bit and then says Belton profiles the same way. He's a big, powerful man, and that makes him an intriguing prospect for the Packers team that seems to be prioritizing the exact kind of player on the offensive line. So, good article there by John Meerdink that was written on the 18th, so prior to the NFL draft. The Draft Network also did an article specifically tied to Anthony Belton. Daniel Harms of the Draft Network wrote, Anthony Belton improving NFL draft stock at the Senior Bowl. Listed at 6'4", 345, Belton had high expectations coming into the 2024 season, and while not all those expectations were met, he took the Senior Bowl challenge seriously and had a great week of practice. He was excellent during the one-on-one pass protection drills and showed out as a run blocker, opening multiple holes for running backs through the week of practice. They put a tweet in here from Noah Fleischman. It says, NC State offensive tackle Anthony Belton held his own against Marshall edge rusher Mike Green, one of the fastest risers at the Senior Bowl this afternoon. Belton is putting together a solid week in Mobile. Goes on to say there might not be a higher riser this week than edge rusher Mike Green, who opted out of the rest of the week after Wednesday's practice, and Belton held his own against the potential first-round pick. Remember, Mike Green did fall, but that wasn't because of his talent. There's some pretty serious allegations against him, which I think probably plays, it might not, but I think that probably plays a lot into that. So I do think he is a first-round talent. Showing a smooth lateral step, Belton closes ground with that step and gets into the pass set depth with waiting hands as Green sets up his rush. Green goes for a spin move, but Belton does well to adjust his feet and not overcorrect inside with the jab step and catches Green with his two-hand jab. I'd like to see him rely less on his two-hand jab, but he keeps Green in front of him after the spin with his hands and a hop to re-anchor. Belton's patience and footwork were good signs during the week, and he continued to improve. Another tweet here from James Foster says, every Anthony Belton one-on-one from the Senior Bowl, lights out day 1 and 2, couple of losses to David Walker day 3, big riser. Belton's willingness to kick inside and play guard this week on top of tackle is another feather in his cap. NFL teams often want to give their best 5 offensive linemen on the field, and showing the versatility to play guard and tackle is always welcome. Central Arkansas rusher David Walker got the best of Belton a few times. He was another player who helped himself this week, so there's always work to do to improve. But this was a great step for Belton. He played snaps at both tackle spots, left guard during one-on-ones, and closed out his final practice with 2 reps against edge rusher Landon Jackson and shut him down both times. Belton ended his Senior Bowl practice week on a high note and is moving in the right direction as the path to the draft gets underway. The movement skills he showcased this week at his size, length, and versatility will be a great evaluation tool for NFL teams. Taking advantage of this week in Mobile wasn't easy, but Belton answered the challenge. Article from 24/7 Sports says former NC State offensive tackle Anthony Belton making waves early at the Senior Bowl. Former NC State offensive tackle Anthony Belton is wasting no time boosting his draft stock at the Senior Bowl. The veteran offensive tackle already piqued the interest of several analysts at the Reese's Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. Belton dominated in one-on-one drills, making himself a huge standout after the first session of practice. By the way, a big part of this, it's not just to kind of get to know the guy. We're looking at it saying this was a reach, I don't get it. I think the pick became not a reach after the Senior Bowl. At that point, the Packers very firmly had him as a zero-issue second-round pick. And I'm sure he's not the only one. The idea, you could have got him in the 3rd round or whatever, I'm not so sure. You're telling me nobody else covets this? Belton did not lose a single rep in those one-on-ones, earning high praise from Pro Football Focus's Max Chadwick. 6'5", 345-pound Belton earned the nickname Escalade at NC State for his special combination of size and mobility. That combo made him a stalwart at the Wolfpack offensive line over the last few seasons. Different squads project him at either tackle or guard, blah, 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 blah. He was very good. I got a couple of videos here. This is a one-on-one. Anthony Belton doing an interview with the Patriots Press, I guess, Patriots channel of some sort.
What's going on, everyone? Taylor Kyles here from CLS Media, here with NC State offensive tackle Anthony Belton, who's been pretty much a brick wall here the past 2 days at Senior Bowl practice. Anthony, first of all, thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. And second of all, how do you feel like you did today compared to yesterday? How do you feel like you grew?
Just compared to today, I just felt switching that side, I felt more comfortable. I did want to show that, be able to be versatile, but just yesterday, I felt rusty, but I felt like I was more in a groove, was able to be more consistent, staying off the ground, and just displaying that competitive edge.
And for anybody who's not yet familiar with you, because it will be very soon, what would you say is your superpower out there on the field that separates you from everybody else?
For me, it's my athleticism. I'm a guy that can move, especially at my size, and I can compare with any when it comes to power, speed, finesse. I'm ready for anything, and I just always been ready for the unexpected, because that's what comes with offensive line. You're going to get different, you got to go against different defenders. It's about how you prepare yourself, how you react, how you bounce back when you lose. So all that comes into play.
And you mentioned that. What is your preparation process when you're going up against a certain guy? Are you just pounding the tape, or what exactly is it?
For me, I'm a big tape guy. When it comes to, and I thank my coach 2J for this, when it comes to me really trying to find out tells from a defender, when it comes to just anything at shin angle, demeanor with the shoulders, lean in the stands, if their right foot's back, left foot back, how many steps they got to take to make an inside move versus the outside move, and all the little things I was just able to learn just from my coaches in college. That's why I think I'm heavy, because I was coming in out of JUCO. I wasn't a big mentally guy when it came to really knowing ball, but them just teaching me this, and I'm able to apply it every day in my routine. I'm thankful.
And the last one I'll ask you, is there any specific player that you try to model your game after?
Yeah. Not necessarily model, but I love just the way Trent Williams, how he plays ball, because if you watch his tape, you never see a tackle like him that's that patient, that's that quick, and nibble on their feet, because he's a receiver in the lineman body, how quick his feet is, how he stays scoring and keeping his frame. But I got a lot, but my top 3 is Tristan Wirfs, Penei Sewell, and Larry Tunsil. Those are the guys I love to put tape on.
You got some really good taste, and also all those traits you mentioned from Trent Williams set out for you, man. Thank you so much.
And then here is that same interviewer with another guy from his Patriots website, channel, whatever, talking about Anthony Belton at the Senior Bowl.
my favorite player today by far, Anthony Belton, left tackle out of NC State. He was dominant today. Left tackle, didn't lose a single rep, was stoning guys left and right. Then when he actually kicked inside to guard, he was just dropping bodies. You saw people on the ground, and this was a guy where in college consistency was the issue, right? The technique, you're wondering, can he put it all together and really maximize this freakish athletic profile? I thought he did that today, but what did you think? And also, how does it follow up with what you saw from him on tape?
He's one of the guys that I think really made himself the most money today at tackle and then moving inside, like you said, the guard, and he absolutely dominated at every single portion of practice today. I mean, there were plays where he just shut down spin moves. He was shutting down outside pass rush. He didn't get back down in power. So I think his ability to anchor and that athleticism that you talked about, that core strength that I think really gets underrated when we talk about evaluating offensive linemen, the core strength ability to anchor down against power rushers, I think that really showed up today for Belton. And I think that's something, that consistency you really need to see for him starting today with not losing a lot of reps today. You need to see more of that consistency going forward. But I think he's really made himself a lot of money today.
So Senior Bowl was massive. It really was. Again, if we could summarize this very quickly, everybody loved his size and the athleticism that went with it. But obviously you want to see him against other guys. And then the constant recurring theme is he's very, I don't want to say raw necessarily, but kind of inconsistent. Can you be consistent? Can you win against top tier guys? He came in and he did. You know, in those situations where you're kind of unsure about a guy's technique and consistency and whatnot, this is where you either, really shine or really get exposed. And if he had shown up and goes up against, Landon and Mike Green and got whooped, he would have fallen probably relatively pretty far. The fact that he came in and handled business at tackle and at guard as a pass blocker and as a run blocker, I would certainly challenge the notion that this pick was a reach. Final thing, I just want to revisit the Bob McGinn article. He was listed as the 8th interior offensive lineman, so again, not super high, but a couple of notes from scouts. He's talented enough and has a sheer size and production history to be a day 2 pick. His body type reminds me of J.C. Latham of Alabama, but a little bit sloppier, a guy that just blots out the sun when he walks by. Good kid, but has some growing up to do with his nutrition, just looking at his body type. He has the rare size to engulf defenders. He has some physicality on initial contact. There's a lack of consistent dominance and finishing for a guy that's that big. Maybe because he's always been a big kid that tries not to hurt people too much. He's as talented as they come, said a second scout. He could be a franchise left tackle. He's just a character concern in terms of his overall compete and toughness and urgency and weight issues and some laziness. He's big, long arms, light on his feet. He can play either tackle. He can play guard. That kid's really gifted. It's just you'll always want more out of him. Plenty of guys like this that have concerns go in the second round. You don't find big people that are that talented. So there you go. Listen, this is what Packer fans have kind of been opposed to our second and third round picks. The guys that have, they need coaching, but they have really high upside. I will say, though, again, I've said this before, we kind of have to pick a lane. Because another thing that we really want is we've got enough good players, we need great players. Well, if you look for the high floor, low ceiling prospects, you'll probably get good players. You're very unlikely to get great players. You want the next David Bakhtiari at left tackle, you want the next Josh Sitton at guard, then you better take a pretty big swing. And I think Belton and Savion Williams are big swings. I think Golden is a little bit less of a risk, which is, obviously first round pick inherently has a little bit less risk, but, really polished already. Has some risk in terms of size and physicality and whatnot, but as a blocker, I don't know that he offers very much at all, but he's polished. I think our fourth round pick is I don't want to pigeonhole him as a low ceiling guy, but certainly a little bit of a safer pick. Don't know that he has sky high attributes, but he should be good. And Packer fans seem to like our first and fourth round picks, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm going to leave you guys with that. You have a good one. I'll talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Escalade on the line, blocking sun with my frame. 6'6", 336 defenders learn my name. Green and gold on my chest, power pressed in my veins. Escalade on the line, making rushers feel the strain. Escalade on the line, blocking sun with my frame. 6'6", 336 defenders learn my name. Green and gold on my chest, power pressed in my veins. Escalade on the line, making rushers feel the strain. I step up in the trench, they feel the earth shake. Length and strength combined, no one here safe. Pancake spree, ground zero, cooking fools in the lane. Inside zone wizardry, breaking ankles like a game. Anchor set, hands laser, hold the point like a lord. Long arms stretching wide, turn your rush into a board. Massive size, clean stride, I goes past every snap. Packers found a wrecking ball, no looking back. Pressure meet resistance, I'm a blockade deluxe. Rushers meet the wall, brains fried like bad luck. Footwork slick on counters, balance tight like a queen. Power drive, edge dive, oscillate inside the scene. Second round, locomotive steam rolling through the fight. Tougher than your nightmares, steel giant in the night. Escalating full tilt, no retreat, no escape. Green and gold fortress, stand aside, feel my way. Escalade on the line, blocking sun with my frame. 6'6", 336 defenders learn my name. Green and gold on my chest, power pressed in my veins. Escalade on the line, making rushers feel the strain. Escalade on the line, blocking sun with my frame. 6'6", 336 defenders learn my name. Green and gold on my chest, power pressed in my veins. Escalade on the line, making